Okay, so if you are here, I hope that you have a Challenge 4 student or are just curious about what's coming up for Challenge 4. This is the March Madness Challenge 4 edition. Pro tip, it's nice to have your catalog ready. I didn't recommend this last year because I just hadn't thought about it. But then as Jamie was going through, she did a call last year. And I think, Jamie, you said, hey, I like to write in my catalog. And it was like, oh, that's genius. And I wrote all these tips for she was doing the Challenge B walkthrough. And I wrote all these things in the catalog. And then I used those throughout the year. I went back into that and like when we got to mock trial, I looked in there for some of the things that she wrote about it. So that was really helpful to me. So have that handy. It's kind of good. So because we are a larger group, we're going to kind of just, if everybody has, if you haven't already, put the number of years, homeschooling, your CC, kind of like your CC resume, how old your kids are, stuff like that. That way, Melissa and I can just make sure that we're tailoring our conversation to the audience. So I am Krista Bottomley. I am your Kentucky book rep. I am on both halves of the state. I live right in the smack middle of the state, which makes it easy for me to get both sides. I've been book repping for a good while, but mostly in another state out in Pennsylvania and up and down the East Coast. But we've been doing CC for about 14 years. We've been homeschooling for, depending on when you start, my daughter, who's 23, she's always been homeschooled and she's about to graduate. She'll be graduating in May from college. So we've been homeschooling for however long you want to count that. She graduated Challenge 4. And I have a Challenge B and a Challenge A student, and then I still have a foundation student. So kind of gives me a little perspective, but also gives me that vision into the future. So I always look forward to these calls because then people like Melissa can remind me of where I'm going with my students. So Melissa, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Yeah. I'm Melissa King. I'm a Challenge 4 director this year in my community for my second son. He is turning 18 at the end of this month. And I graduated my oldest son in 2024. And then after these two, I'll have a Challenge 2 and a Challenge 1 student next year, and then an FE student, first year essentials. So my little one's finally moving up into essentials next year. Let's see. I've directed foundations and essentials before. I've done Challenge B and Challenge 1 also. So it's been a real pleasure to do Challenge 4 this year. It's very restful and fruitful. So I've really enjoyed that.
Okay, so
Sorry, I'm syncing with you. Where
are
you?
Okay. Okay, gotcha. All right. So our agenda.
Slides aren't moving. I don't know why.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Okay, so our meeting agenda, so we kind of greeting and introductions. We're going to go through the director's perspective, which is going to be done by Melissa, and then her son is going to do like students' perspective of Challenge 4 and seeing what he feels like are good things to know for your students. And I'll go through the book rep's perspective, just basically cover some of the resources that we have, both physical resources, but also online resources, etc. And then the parents' perspective is going to be kind of Q&A time, where you guys, if you have any Challenge 4 students, maybe if you want to give any tips, like some have already graduated before, maybe this is your second or third time through, if you have any insights for others, or if any of you have any questions for anybody on the call, then we'll wrap it up from there. So this is our, everybody knows our scope and sequence. You guys are all veterans, so I don't have to walk you through all this as much. So we'll just go ahead and start off. Oh, one thing I didn't think about, Melissa, if you don't take control, it's going to have the camera on me the whole time, and you don't want that. So why don't you take control? So we had an issue with another event. It didn't record when somebody else took control, but I can still overlay the slides on just fine. So it'll still work out. So
what do I need to click on to take control?
Oh, I see it. You should, gotcha. It should be up at the top. Yep.
There we go. All right. Let me get to the right slide now because I feel like I moved it. We got past that. Okay. Scope and sequence. Here we go. Can everybody see me okay?
It's actually not doing the cameo thing. All these tricks. It just says director perspective, but when you scroll forward, it'll just go back. It'll go back. It'll go to the next slide. So
yeah. Well, like
all
I
the
said,
technology.
I'm Melissa King, and I think there was you all saw the picture of my beautiful family back there. Um, yeah, I just would love to just talk about Challenge 4 this year and for you all and help give you a little vision of what that looks like. I know sometimes we get a little bottleneck at Challenge 3 and people aren't sure if they want to finish with Challenge 4, but I always encourage it. It is a beautiful capstone to all of CC curriculum. And I know that the challenge levels feel like they get consistently heavier, especially like 1, 2, and 3. It's like more work, more work, more work. And then I feel like challenge 4 is a beautiful breath of fresh air. So I always encourage students just do it. So the um, theme for Challenge 4 is understanding consequences defines leadership. And I like to tell my families that really what we're talking a lot about in leadership in Challenge 4 is Christian leadership. It's really training and teaching them how to go forth into the world and be Christian leaders. And I realize not all students have a personal relationship with Jesus. I have 5 students, and not all of them have been baptized or are believing right now, but they're asking great questions. And they also, it's great whenever students come from different denominations. I think sometimes people hesitate about that, but that really leads to beautiful conversations and contributes greatly to the conversation when you can get different perspectives and hear each other um, defend their own faith in ways, but also realize where they can agree on specific doctrines and things too. So it's really beautiful and great practice for our students to begin interacting in circles that are in a safe space, but practicing those conversations where they might have to defend their faith in the future. Um, so we study the things of old in Challenge 4 is what I like to say to bring perspective to our day. As we talk through the strands in a minute, we'll look at how we're really looking back a lot in Challenge 4. We're looking at the epics of Greek and Roman times. We're looking at ancient history through the discoverers all the way up to modern day. Even the study of calculus and the physics in the calculus for everyone in the research strand. I feel like there's so much history and so many great philosophical questions throughout that as well. And so it's really neat to like focus our hearts on these timeless things so that as we're moving forward into the world, we have a better grasp, a more eternal grasp on what this world looks like. Um, so I'm going to walk through each strand just briefly, talk about what it looks like at home and in community per strand, and then I'll let my son Hayden come in and give a little bit of his perspective of it, and then we'll have some time for Q&A after we talk about after Krista talks on her perspective as well.
And Melissa, I'm going to take control. Since the cameos aren't working, I'm going to take back control just to help the
Sure.
recording. So,
Go
so
for
you
it.
can just let me know
Yeah.
everything's progressing. Okay.
All right. So the first thing I want to clarify in Challenge 4 is that there are 3 strands that are director-led. That's logic, grammar, and research. And that is where the director is leading the conversation and modeling for the students how to walk through that, asking good questions. And then there are 3 strands that are student-led, where they take turns planning their lesson plan and coming prepared to lead the conversation. And that is reasoning, exposition, and debate. So as we get to those, I'll talk a little bit more about what that looks like as a student-led strand. So my first director-led strand is logic. And we are looking at advanced mathematics from Saxon, but none of my students are actually doing this. Either they finished it or they're using another math program. And so it's been really interesting to try and hold to that. And so we definitely use the math map artwork as an exordium each week, and we talk about the subject of the week's lesson, going through the math map. I have extra copies of the artwork that I pass around, and we find problems and things that relate to the math map topic from the advanced mathematics book and work through them together. And then the students all also are participating in a financial class that they're learning about their own personal finance. And so sometimes they will talk about things like that as well in our discussion. So it's been really fun and interesting this year to try and keep that strand consistent for them, knowing that like they're not actually might not be doing a math program at home right now. But it's been really beautiful, especially with the math map topics, keeping us on track and seeing the progression. And there's so many weeks that it actually integrates really well with our calculus for everyone in research strand. And so it's been beautiful to do that. But that is one thing that I'm looking forward to is Math Map making it all the way to Challenge 4 because I think it's beautiful in Community Day. All right, grammar. This is one of my favorite. In the first semester of Challenge 4, you are translating passages that aren't in any book that you have to purchase. And so there is on CC Connected, there's a document called Latin Links, and it has links to find the things you're translating each week. So we start with a lot of scripture, some verses or prayers, some poems. We move into some other famous ancient writings like Newton's three laws, and some other poems and things like that and hymns that we translate from Latin to English. And so that is really fun semester where they are able to look at words that are familiar. A lot of weeks we would just put the verse up and they could pretty much translate it just from sight, from knowing a lot of the vocabulary from their other challenge floor levels or being familiar with the verse itself really helped. And so I think that's a real restful way to enter into translating Latin in the real world, and they really enjoyed that. And then in second semester, we began using Henley fourth year, and this is where we're translating Virgil's Aeneid. And so we begin with some overviews, and then each week it has on one page in the Henley book the Latin on one side, and then on the other page it has a bunch of footnotes and helpful things about the vocabulary and all that. And so it's been really wonderful for us to look at that as well and see the history. Plus, my students really enjoy the stories of exposition, which we also do Virgil's Aeneid in exposition. And so the Iliad, Odyssey, and the Aeneid all have similar tales that are being told throughout all three. And so they really get into it and do a lot of comparison with that. So it's really helpful. But the Henley book is really great because it has some specific vocabulary even in the back that is Virgil's specific vocabulary, and then some other Henley vocabulary that's review or new that we're looking at as well. But the footnotes are really the most helpful thing. We really walk through and do like an English overview and then look very closely about why Virgil chose to use the things he did in his poetry, and the way that he was expressing through the language he used is really a great conversation that we focus on for that. All right, and then we move on to the research strand where we have calculus for everyone. Can you move the slide, Krista? This is new.
Is it forward for everybody?
Oh, there we go. I just had to sync again. Sorry.
Okay.
Okay, and this is in your scope and sequence that you might have seen when she passed through was this book. It says Calculus for Everyone, but if you read the subtitle there, it's Understanding Physics and the Mathematics of Change. So this on their transcripts looks like an intro to physics level. And it is wonderful. I have really enjoyed walking through it this year with the students. Some of them have gone all the way through and already done all of advanced mathematics and maybe even Saxon physics that we used to do. But this book does a really great job of integrating history and science, research strand, and math all into this one book for great discussions. And it walks us through step by step, slowly, looking at calculus, the history behind calculus, why calculus even was invented, and why it was needed, and then walking us step by step through all the parts of calculus, including functions, derivatives, graphs, all the things. And so it's been really great for me I do not have a real great grasp of mathematics, especially the higher mathematics. And so it has been really fun for me to read, take notes on, and discuss with the students in class. And it's been really a beautiful strand. Also on CC Connected, we have the videos that Mitch Stokes created for Roman Roads Media, who's the producer of this curriculum. And those are wonderful too, that if your student just needs another layer, or if you as a parent would like to get an overview of the chapter they're on, going and watching that is really helpful too. We got those for parents in the Learning Center as well. All right, next is our first student-led strand, exposition. And if you notice, the number of books to read in Challenge 4 is much smaller than what we've had in the past. I know they read a lot of Shakespeare in Challenge 3, but then the years before that, it was like 18 books for this. So this is very restful. And even The Heroes of the City of Man, the first book you see there, is kind of like a companion book that is somebody's perspective on all of these books. And so it gives a little overview and some of the themes that author has found in the chapters we're covering. So it helps the student who's might be the leader or the other students to get some more perspective on the passages, to be able to think of good questions to ask. At the end of each chapter in Heroes, the City of Man, it has some thought questions and some review questions that they might pull from to help with their lesson. And so these are in order. We read them. We start with Hesiod's Theogony, and then we move into the Iliad, and then the Odyssey, and then the Aeneid, and then our last book is Oedipus Rex. And so these have been really fun conversations. I think this is one of my students' favorite strands this year. They really get into it. They get to do some dramatic interpretations of each of these books, and they've been enjoying that. But a lot of the themes have to do with virtue and courage, and also relating back to looking at these heroes in these ancient tales and comparing them to, the hero that we have in Jesus Christ as well, and what that means and what it means to be a character and have Christian character, and looking at the choices that these leaders made, whether good or bad, and comparing and saying, what can we learn from that? And that really reflects on our choices. What was it again? I can't remember. Understanding consequences defines leadership. So we're looking at these choices that these leaders and these heroes made, and seeing how it affected their leadership and their character. And so it's really a great, fruitful conversation to have through that. All right, then we have the debate strand. This one is not as much a favorite of the students, but as much as they do not like maybe this author's style or the way that he writes, I think it is a beautiful book that connects back to so many things that they've learned over their years in Foundations and Challenge. One thing that we've seen we've just moved in past the chapter on exploring the stars and the universe. And so we got a review of all the different astronomers that they studied in Challenge B, and talking about a lot of them, and Ptolemy, Copernicus, Aristotle, Newton. There's just so much review and deeper information. I think this author does a great job of really researching some obscure things that you wouldn't know in everyday history books. And so it's been really interesting for me to learn the history of things. The students also really talk about how this author organizes his history book. It's not chronological like Patriots History of the United States that they read in Challenge 3, but the author is able to divide the history of the world into big subtopics. For instance, it starts with time, and so there's several chapters about just talking about the inventions of time and how they made the sundial and different kinds of clocks, and how that has continued to grow all through history. And then he jumps to a whole different topic like navigation, and goes back and starts talking about ships and stuff. So it's really neat perspective to walk through history with different filters in a way, and it's been really interesting. And I'll talk some more about the rhetorical assignments the students do in these strands towards the end, so that you get a better idea how that plays out in the class. And then the last student-led strand is reasoning. And I think this is one of the favorites of the Challenge 4 level. This year, we in the first semester studied a broad overview of the Old Testament, reading through every book of the Old Testament, most passages. We skipped over some of them, but it gives them a big overview of the story of the history of the Old Testament, moving into the New Testament, where we read Mere Christianity, which is what we're reading this semester. But next year it is going to be changing, and I think this is a really beautiful change. They're moving Mere Christianity to first semester, like the first 7 or 8 weeks, which I think is great because it gives the students a real down-to-earth view of what Christianity is, through C.S. Lewis's. This is a book that's written from his radio talks that he did during World War II. They asked him to go on the radio and talk about what was Christianity. And so this book walks us through that, and all of my students have really enjoyed it, had great conversations about it this year. So I'm excited they're moving that first next year. So when you have those students that can really get a grasp on what we're talking about before moving into the Word. And then Krista will talk a little bit more about the new resource for reasoning together words in the Word, which is also still going through scripture, but with a little bit of help. So Krista, you want to talk about that real quick?
Sure, I can. I'll get a little more deep into my section, but I am doing like training events. Also, if you watch that, was it the new product blitz that I talked about at the very beginning? If you watch a recording of that, you can scroll through kind of all the way to the end, and I do a little bit more of a deep dive. The recording I have, though, I didn't go, we were kind of running out of time, so we kind of clipped it short. But if you want a little bit more in depth about this particular product, I am doing like trainings. There should be like 30-minute trainings coming in April or May. But essentially what they're doing is this is sort of Timothy that wrote it. He gives this as it's sort of like a toolbox of all the different skills that they've learned in all their like all the way starting in foundations through essentials and into challenge, things like the Freytag's pyramid, outlining, diagramming, memorization skills, but some more complex skills that they've learned throughout their later challenge years. And it's kind of keeping them all together and using it to apply to scripture. First, well, it starts off first using it, applying it to Mere Christianity and understanding his arguments, and then using different tools throughout as you go through. And then the second semester, they get to choose which tool they use, applying to scripture, which they read together. So.
Great. Yeah, this is a favorite of the students. All right, one thing I wanted to talk about specifically is the capstone event, which is senior thesis in Challenge 4. And it is not integrated into any of the strands. It kind of stands alone on its own. Through the first semester, it's a lot of just thinking through what some of their topics interest might be, and then maybe starting towards the end of the first semester is when they really start some to narrow down their thesis statement and do some directed research. And then when they come back in second semester, it really picks up building the outline and start writing and getting the rough drafts in. And then they're submitting their final draft and doing their defense at the end of the year. And so, yeah, not every CC student is required to do the senior thesis, but it is definitely the cherry on top, I think, of their education in CC, and a beautiful example of how far they've come and the maturity that they have. So they pick a topic that is interesting to them, and they do a bunch of research and write their paper where they are picking a side of a specific topic and wanting to defend it in a way with evidence and even refute, like looking at the refutation of the other side and addressing that as well. And so it's beautiful. I've seen some really great topics. Some of the topics in my class currently are biblical marriage is one. Another one is feminism in the workplace and how it's affected it negatively. One student is writing about the effects of homelessness. Another one's writing about student reading aloud to students and the effects that has. And then another one is comparing EV vehicles to combustion engines and the effects of them long term, which one's better. So just some really great topics for them to dive into. They get a mentor to help them walk through it that might offer some resources for them, and they review their work and give them feedback and things like that. And then towards the end, they write up an abstract, which is about a 3 to 5 minute speech where they're giving an overview of their paper in front of a panel of judges. And then the judges who have already read through their entire paper are there and ask them questions, and they get to answer them and defend their thesis. So it's really beautiful, really seeing how they become so familiar and so knowledgeable about the content that they are so at ease when they're up there and able to answer those questions with confidence. And it's really beautiful. All right, the last slide that I wanted to show you all was just a quick semester snapshot. This is from the Challenge 4 guide this year, so it'll look slightly different next year, but I just wanted to kind of give an overview. I think you've probably seen how busy these sheets are in other challenge levels, so I just wanted to show you a little bit of the restfulness that you have here in Challenge 4 as parents and as students. It's a much slower walk through all the books, chapters at a time. Specifically, if you look at research, we're covering about a chapter a week. You look at the reasoning strand where they were covering the Old Testament. I forgot to mention Invitation to the Psalms, but that's, I think, going away with the new reasoning book. So, but you can see where they would have a few weeks to cover big swaths of scripture and then come into class and talk about it. Also, the exposition strand, it walks slowly through those books. And if you can see, it's a little bit grayed out. Those are the rhetorical assignments that they have throughout this year. And these are rhetorical assignments they've been doing through Challenge 2 and 3 and even 1. But this is like their final time to really shine and show all the skills that they've learned and the ways that they've grown in these areas. So you'll see things like the first one is Chart of the Gods, where after they read theogony, they make a chart of the Roman and Greek gods that they learned about in different ways and themes. And, another way for them to get their personal artistic view into a project that's really fun. There's a few speeches, the expository speech and impromptu speeches, current events speech. There was an Old Testament speech in first semester too. And so these are 3 to 5 minute speeches that are typically memorized, and they get up there and present on a topic that they've just read about or learned more about. Where the expository speeches are where they're teaching on a specific subject. So say they chose to talk about the creation event in Genesis, then they would talk on that for those 3 to 5 minutes. There's also some impromptu debate activities, which are fun, where we have some topics about what they've been learning, and they get to get up and talk about those. Day of learning the topic, they get 3 to 5 minutes to write down what they remember and make a quick outline and then present on that. Some of my favorite ones are the dramatic interpretations from exposition. With each book that we read, they get to do a memorized portion of the book or a paraphrase of the book and present it. And so they do it individually and they do it in groups. We just finished a duo dramatic interpretation for the Odyssey a couple weeks ago, and it was really fun. One group even decided to sing part of the epic musical that is about the Odyssey for theirs, and so they did a great job on that. Let's see, any other big things on there? I don't think there's any other specific. If you see one of the rhetorical assignments that you have a question about, you can ask about it in the Q&A. But I just want to show you this is a very restful year. There's I keep telling my students, I can sit down and read through all the chapters and plan my lesson plan in a few hours, maybe spread out throughout the week or sit down on a Saturday and read through. And so it's very doable. A lot of them have jobs and are doing other things, pursuing future sports and college applications and visits and things like that. So it does allow them to have that restfulness this year. All right, so I'm going to turn it over. I have my son Hayden here with me, and so we're going to get a little bit of his perspective about Challenge 4. Let's see if I can get him in the camera there. So Hayden, I'll just have you introduce yourself. Tell us about how long you've been in CC and maybe like your favorite strand, and then I'll ask you a few questions.
Okay. My name's Hayden King. I'm in Challenge 4 right now. I've been doing CC for about coming up on 8 years now. Is that right?
10, I
10
think.
years. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. So basically, I was in first grade when I joined CC. I was about 7 years old. I'm 17 now. About to turn 18 this month and graduate in a couple months.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
All right. So what is your favorite strand specifically in Challenge 4 this year?
Challenge 4 this year, I'm gonna go reasoning probably. We're reading Mere Christianity right now. It's a very good book. It's very easy to talk about. A lot of good questions being asked during discussions and things. So
Mm-hmm.
probably had to be my favorite.
Do you think it is a good book for even students that aren't yet maybe Christians or have made a profession of faith?
Yeah, there's a lot of information in that book that I've been a Christian my whole life, but reading that book has opened basically my third eye about Christianity. C.S. Lewis is a very good writer. He did very good in that book, and
Yeah.
it's very knowledgeable.
That's great. What's your least favorite strand right now that is hard or maybe challenging for you?
Um, I would say probably debate. We're reading The Discoverers right now. It's not that bad of a book. It's just a little hard to understand. There's a lot of chapters and information you have to take in. Especially if you're leading that strand, it's pretty difficult. So I would say that's probably my least favorite to lead and attend during class.
Yeah. Yeah, I think some of the drier chapters you all struggle with trying to make it interesting for your fellow classmates,
Yeah.
don't you? Yeah. All right, great. Okay, so thinking back on all of your challenge years, what is something that you did and all the other challenges that prepared you well for Challenge 4?
Hmm. I think debate, coming up with information on the fly, public speaking,
Mm.
kind of having to do a lot of research and be knowledgeable about what you're debating. Um, Also, not knowing which side of the argument that you're going to be doing until at least a week prior, having to do a lot of research and know a lot of information from both sides just in case. Um, I will say there's a lot of debates that could be one-sided, so if you are negative on that case, then it is a bit difficult, but it's still good because it's challenging and just kind of have to try your best.
Yeah, helps give you a perspective of the other side and how to defend your side. Great.
Yeah.
All right, so out of Challenge 4, what is the one thing that you think is going to translate well into moving into your next steps in life, like whether you do college or go into the workforce? What is something from Challenge 4 that has really grown you or that you know you'll take forward?
Um, Probably a little bit of three things. I would say public speaking is definitely one. Um, there's a lot of people that I've met doing a lot of stuff. I did drill last week for the Army because that's what I want to do
Mhm.
my career after I graduate, do that and go to UK for our ROTC program. I think writing, a lot of writing and essays and formats of outlines and stuff like that, critical thinking, that's probably helped me a lot. And memorization too.
Yeah.
Memorization of like doing impromptu speeches or things of that sort. So
Yeah. We have at least one student on here that's moving into Challenge 4 next week. So
yeah.
if you could give advice to them, any students moving into Challenge 4 about this year, maybe if they're like timid or scared of it or excited, how would you encourage a student moving into 4?
You're about to love your life. Going from challenge 3 to challenge 4 is a lot of weight off of your back, I will say. Um,
Yeah.
it's probably about half the workload that you're doing right now with challenge 3, and it's not a lot of, it's more of just like discussion in class, you know.
Mhm.
Don't be intimidated by having to lead subjects and stuff because it's really not that hard. Just sit down for a day, do your, work and your research on whatever strand you're going to be leading and just kind of have some notes. And it's mainly just talking about a quick summary of whatever you read, asking some questions and having a nice discussion. So
Yeah, and using the tools that you like
Yeah.
comparison charts and things like that.
uncommon
Yeah.
topics. It's kind of just built in at this point.
Right. Yeah.
Just doing that stuff.
For the last couple weeks, I've been taking notes when the students are leading and noting how many times the questions they have are like a 5 common topic question or a 5 canon of rhetoric. And then when they get done and we assess and say, what are some things you did well, something you want to improve? I always say you had like 6 comparisons and 10 definitions, like that they don't even know they're doing it at this stage because it is so natural to them and that they've been doing it since they started in Challenge and even since Essentials somewhat. And so it's neat to see how they don't even know they're asking those questions. I think sometimes I could say, what are the 5 common topics? And they'd have to pause and think through, but they naturally ask 5 common topic questions all the time. So it's been really neat to see that growth in them too. All right, does anybody else have any questions for Hayden or myself before he goes? I just want any other questions for the student? Okay, good. Well, thank you, Hayden, for joining us, and I hope
Melissa,
it was helpful. Yes.
can I ask a question? Sorry, I was trying to figure out how to turn my
Sure.
mic off. This is Stacy. I'm
Hey.
just wondering, my son that's going into Challenge 4, he works at Chick-fil-A, he does baseball, he's wanting to take some dual credit classes. Did you feel like there was room in your schedule to do those things this year?
Yeah, I would say in Challenge 2, actually, I was also working at Chick-fil-A and doing baseball at the same time. And Challenge 2 is a little bit more mentally and preparationally demanding for school.
Yeah.
But Challenge 4 is really easy. You will definitely have time. You just gotta find time to read, basically. That's most of what we're doing
Lots
right
of
now.
reading. Mhm.
But yeah, it should be pretty easy.
Yeah. I think it's
Thank
very
you.
hospitable to students in this stage of life. Yeah. Any other questions?
Hey, Melissa
Yeah.
and Hun. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. Do you find that with the class that there is a lot more temptation to skip over and not read the material and just kind of because there's like maybe some senioritis and we're just kind of tired and we're like, why are we reading the Iliad and the Odyssey? I'm just tired.
Yes.
that a thing?
Definitely. Yeah. There's been some cases where I didn't read all the chapters for the Iliad or the Odyssey and
Yeah, I've
stuff
had
like
to
that.
ban the question. Like a lot of them will, for their exordium, will be like, "Did everybody read the assignment?" And I was like, "That is no longer allowed to be asked." Yes, they've all read it. If not, they're gonna open their book and follow along.
Yeah.
But yes, senioritis hits hard, especially second semester right now when the weather gets warm and we're talking about graduation and all the
Yeah.
things. So I really try and remind them each week, guys, it doesn't take much to get this work done and be ready to come and talk about it. And I think they've done a great job. I think even when they do not have time or have skipped something, they're honest and say, I didn't get to that chapter. But they listen and engage with the conversation still and learn from other people's perspective too. And so I think they're very gracious with each other in that. But yeah, senioritis is real. You
Yeah, I
gotta stay
think
on top of it.
I had more senioritis my Challenge 3 year than I did this year. Just we had 2 students actually who graduated early that year, and I was not excited going into Challenge 4 this year, but I will say I do like it. I'm glad I'm doing it
Yeah,
because
that's
it's not a big workload. I'm just kind of plugging it out for a little bit,
yeah.
just doing it.
I think that they really find a lot of personal enjoyment from the subject matter this year as well too. That makes a lot of difference.
Yeah.
So, Jamie, I see you have your hand up.
Hey, a question from me. My name is Tucker. Hayden, I wanted to ask, what's your senior thesis look like if you're doing it? And particularly, what did the research phase look like for that? How did you balance that out? How long did it take? What are the kind of resources you looked at?
Yeah. I'm doing my senior thesis on EV cars versus combustion cars, just the engines mostly, like in the long run and environmental facts about it. I did have a couple books that I found in the library, but not a lot of books are very useful for my research for this topic, at least for my topic. So I'm gonna have to do a lot more research like online, finding articles and
Mhm.
stuff like that. But
Yeah, some scientific articles have been the direction we got, and a lot of the other students I think have had to really go online. I think our local libraries aren't the greatest about having good research materials for us, and so they've definitely had to learn that.
yeah.
Yeah. we started research like before Christmas somewhat. And so they've been doing that, and they just submitted like their final outlines.
Mhm.
And so now it's digging into the writing. And so
One thing I will say is do not procrastinate on your senior thesis, because I knew I had all year to work on it, and it's kind of due like towards the end of second semester, which we're in right now. And I will say I wish I did a lot more research during the first semester, which really isn't required. But if I were you, that's what I would do, because
Yeah.
I'm running out of time right now.
yeah,
Our what is it, rough draft?
rough drafts due in a couple weeks.
Yeah, so gotta start piling in some more research, get that done. But
I tell them when they get their outlines done, I'm like, you're going to recognize some gaps maybe, or where, we give feedback and they have to find out, where there might be just some holes that they got to fill in with more, going back to their research and finding some things. So yeah, it's a lot of work. And there are alternate schedules that I tried to use an alternate schedule to give them more time in the first semester to really dig into research and things. But I think we've caught up to the actual schedule in the challenge guide now. And so I'm like, no more procrastinating. You guys stick on this schedule now. So yeah. All right. Any other questions? All right. Well, thank you, Hayden, for joining us, and we'll move on to the Q&A of other parents. And I think Krista has her perspective on some of the resources available too. So
sounds good.
all right. Thank you, Hayden.
Yep.
You're
Okay.
muted. Oh, there
Yep,
you go.
sorry. Yeah. All the tech, so much tech. Okay, so I'll say from my daughter, when she went through, one of the things that I found is that because the workload was kind of lighter, she kind of got a little lazy. But we also were in a speech and debate league, like the NCFCA speech and debate league, and I found when that workload went up, somehow she did better in CC. It didn't actually, it's what what is it that they say, like busy people get work done better or something. And so somehow like adding on an additional element really pushed her, and then she started to really excel second semester. And also her senior thesis, she realized, so she looks back and she's like, man, my senior thesis was terrible. I'm like, but you learned so much through it, because she bit off more than she could chew. It was way bigger of it was too abstract, too lofty, too ambitious. But that taught her, she's about to give her senior oral exams before graduation in April, and she looks back to senior thesis and all the things that she learned. So it's not like we keep saying, it's not about the product, it's about the process. So okay, so I'm going to jump into the book rep. I'm going to put my book rep hat on. So something to be aware of with the, by the way, so I know you guys didn't like the Discovers in your class, but I have heard so many people that have everybody's different on their opinions, but I've heard about some classes that love Discover so much that they request the rest of the book series as their senior present. So like my daughter has 3 other of his books that she's enjoyed. So everybody's different, like Gathering of Days in Challenge A. I have heard so many people say they hate it, but my son loves it. And everybody has their loves and hates. So just don't write it off just because some people don't love it. So so a lot of people aren't aware that a lot of the books in the catalog, if you go on the online catalog and you scroll down, there are these Words Aptly Spoken videos linked here. You can also find them on YouTube. This is clickable. You can click on that and find the YouTube books, or their book club discussions. They have Lee Borton's, Timothy Knott's, Jennifer Courtney, a lot of other really good CC leaders. You can kind of like hear their perspectives on what they like about the book. It's usually 4 good, strong minds kind of swapping ideas. And they have for several of the Challenge 4 books, they have a discussion about those. Like there's the Heroes of the City of Man is in there. Also, a lot of the classical Christian leaders books are also on there. So the catalog's pretty straightforward. There is also a clickable catalog that you can go through. It's pretty straightforward for Challenge 4 because you pretty much you're reusing a lot of things you already have, but it does get kind of basic. It's restful for parents as well as for students. Some parent resources that we do offer that are good. And I think, Melissa, you can maybe speak to Angels in the Architecture. Have you read this, or were you just wanting to, discuss it with someone else, like having the opportunity?
I bought it when my son moved into Challenge 3.
Okay.
Yeah, it's really great. It's been a couple of years, so I'm like trying to rack my brain right now,
Like get back into
what's it
that.
about?
Yeah. Mentally jump back in.
Yeah.
But it is one that I've heard people recommend, like, and I have not read this one yet either, but I know that some of his other books are really insightful. So it is something that I was looking forward to reading. Abolition of Man, I think is a powerful book, and a lot of people really they wax poetic when they start talking about the significance of education and what society does to what humanity basically by changing the nature of man. And then Listening for Heaven's Sake, this one there is a book talk on that. I made that link clickable. The other two, there's lots of book clubs online that you can listen to the book clubs on those from other people outside of CC. But this Listening for Heaven's Sake, Lee Borton does talk about the significance of that, especially for the Challenge 4 years, because you have been pouring into them for years and years and years and telling, like, especially when they were at the grammar stage, you were filling that bucket, like, soaking the sponge. Dialectic stage, you were really definitely wrestling with ideas and like, comparing ideas and having a lot of discussion. But at this stage, they really, and I think a lot of older moms start to see this, that their students really do need to be heard now. And so a lot of our roles as a mom is to step back and listen, and how important that is for letting them mature. And even my daughter's, the one that's at college, she really just sometimes needs me just to listen and not tell her what to do and what to think and all that. And then there comes a point where she pivots and she's like, wait, now, what do you think about this? And if I hadn't and then I have the opportunity to talk to her then, but if I don't put in the time to just be quiet and actually listen and really, really hear her, we'll never get to that point. So it's just, that book is about the significance of listening. Okay, so Melissa did a pretty good job about, like, I mean, she, it's pretty basic at this level. If you're gonna continue on with advanced mathematics, you'll want to have like a solutions guide. A lot of the challenge programs, like in our community, the challenge program is like the challenge directors have gone to using the math map as a backbone, even though the students might not be, they're probably not using the math map. Although there's two challenge 4 students I understand that are using monomials at home as like to help them understand like the broader sequence of math, in addition to what they're using outside of that. But the notations cards are a really good supplement, because especially if they're going to go into college level mathematics and sciences, these notation, like knowing the notations and the basic shorthand of math, the language of math, having that just roll off their tongues and know it really, really well. It's just a nice time to get that cemented before they go off to school.
I forgot to mention also, Krista, that my students, we do the notations flashcards in class sometimes, and we have a goal to compete against the Challenge A class at the end of the year to see who knows more of the notations. So yeah.
I like that. Yeah, that's a really good. I'm gonna have to pass that one along to some people. So, okay. So then for Latin, I think that so my daughter, her thoughts were that Castle's Latin Dictionary, she thought I wasted money when I bought it in Challenge A, and she it just sat on the bookshelf for a few years, but come to like Challenge 3 and 4, she found that she was reaching for it more and more. Like, and she said that not all the vocab is actually in Henley Latin that they need in order to translate that. Is that what you find, Melissa?
I think my students used, I think Henley does a good job for what we're doing from the Aeneid, covering the vocab. But first semester, when we're translating the scripture and prayers and hymns and other things, we definitely leaned heavily on Castle's Latin Dictionary. CC also recommends a couple apps that are helpful for them to have on their phones at home to work with too. So that helps.
Do you know what those are called, or can you type them in the chat for people?
Yeah, I'll put them in the chat for you.
Okay, awesome. That's great. And if you see an asterisk, by the way, on things, it means it's not required. Anything without an asterisk is required for participation in class. But if there's an asterisk, it's not. It's just an option. And there's other dictionaries out there. So, okay, so for the research strand, as she said, we're doing calculus is for everyone. There is a solution guide for the exercises, parents' discretion about whether you want that for keeping grades or whatnot. exposition. These are all required. I'm trying to remember, there was something, oh, like I said, there's a lot of these words aptly spoken talks about these different books. So for moms who aren't going to sit there and read Virgil's Aeneid, cover to cover, if you want to be able to participate in the discussion. Something else I strongly recommend, and I wish I'd put it on the slide so you guys could see, but there's a lady named Angelina Stanford, and some of you have heard me plug her before, but she has some fabulous, she's a classical educator, and she has a fabulous podcast. I think it's called Literary Life, but she's also the guest on a lot of shows. And there's this one talk that she has called, it's rough, I'm paraphrasing of it, but it's why myths are not optional for Christian education. And it's the whole concept of why on earth are we studying these pagan myths. And she says, especially with Virgil, she has some really interesting takes on the significance of reading Virgil. But I suggest you Google that, see if you can listen to some of her talks. I know Pam Barnhill, who does Our Morning Basket. A lot of younger moms are familiar with her, but she does an interview with Angelina Stanford, and it really just blew my mind. She has another one about fairy tales, but Greek myths in particular, she says, are not optional for Christians to study. And it's amazing because it actually solidified my faith in to study the Greek myths with the perspective that she had. Then so debate, we talked about that briefly. My family loved this book, and it's interesting, I didn't know, but my father actually had his whole series on his bookshelf, and we didn't realize until after Reagan had read these. But these are, you need the book, it's a really big, thick, oh yeah, I do have it here. It's a pretty hefty book. It does, and like Melissa said, it can be a little bit more dry, but I'm wondering if that new Reasoning Strand book with the tools, I wonder if that wouldn't be something that would be good for cross, using those tools that are in the Reasoning Strand to apply to this to help with the dryness of the text. So especially when you've got the Calculuses for Everyone book, that one's not dry at all. That one's like almost a fun read, wouldn't you say, Melissa?
Yeah.
I
really enjoy that one.
Yeah, so the contrast of the two, but I think it does get you ready for more serious academic reading that you're going to be doing in college.
Yeah. I do say my students enjoy it and have learned. I think the struggle they find is leading the conversation through it. And so helping them lean on the tools they have about comparison, and even taking them outside that book and saying, let's compare what you learned this week to another strand or to Odyssey or something, they can really get creative with it. So.
Okay, cool. And I'll show, there's a couple online tools to help with leading a strand too that I can point out to you. So then the Reasoning Strand, as I said, as Melissa said, we are doing Mere Christianity the first 7 weeks. So it's flipped from the way it was last year, and the catalog doesn't reflect that, but it is the first 7 weeks before moving into that toolbox of words in the Word. And I do recommend, go on one of those calls that I'm going to do later, because I could spend a lot of time talking about this particular new resource. But they will be going through large passages together and using the classical tools that they've learned throughout their career in CC to understand Scripture in a more deep and meaningful way. And for myself, I got to plug Mere Christianity. I read this book before I was a Christian, and it put a chink in my armor of why. And I grew up being taught by an animate, angry atheist. Like, I was catechized in atheism the way most people catechize their children in Christianity. And this put a chink in my armor big time, that eventually the whole thing fell apart within a few years. So I think this book is incredibly significant in what it has the power to do.
I think also my oldest son, whenever he did Challenge 4 2 years ago, he read that book, and it really changed his perspective and contributed to his growth as a Christian. And then he just devoured C.S. Lewis, like any C.S. Lewis book he could find his hands on. He was reading them to the point where, like, he had planned to go into a trade, and in June he was like, I've decided I'm going to go to college and be a pastor. Like, it just like transformed him. So it's a powerful book. Yep.
And that's something, so like C.S. Lewis, I would not endorse all his theology. And now, as having been a believer for a while now, I would not endorse all his theology, but I had all these people trying to witness to me. I had aunts and uncles and grandparents trying to talk to me about Christianity, but they were using it in the jargon of Christians. And C.S. Lewis, he really, being an atheist for so long, he had the perspective of what did I need to hear, and so he's really speaking. It's a great book for understanding how do you speak to somebody who really just is not in the Christian world and does not have a Christian worldview. How do you approach them from their perspective? So it's a really powerful book. So okay, so as I said, there'll be there's changes to the reasoning strand, but we will update those. And I just want to remind everybody, every time I've looked, sometimes when CC makes changes, we get a little nervous and we're like, oh, but I really love the previous resource. But when I look back at the things that CC changed that I remember getting frustrated about and being worried about, or not being like, why is CC changing? I already loved what they were doing. When I look back now at those resources that they changed, I'm like, oh, no, we changed it for the better. And I wouldn't go back to the old edition of Essentials. I wouldn't go back to the old timeline cards, etc. Do you remember, like, before we were doing Invitation to the Psalms, weren't we doing, was it a Ravi Zacharias book, Jesus Among Other Gods? And there's obvious reasons that we switched away from that, but there's been other things that I look back in old catalogs. I'm like, oh, I totally understand why they changed away from that resource, and we've done better. So just want to express confidence in trusting CC with this. So this is something that, now Jamie, don't you do a class on this, or this Office of Assertion?
Yes, we did. We did a parent equipping on the Office of
Equipping.
Assertion. Mhm.
Okay, would you like to, so I only read this I read it so quick, and I didn't really get what I should have out of it when my daughter was going to be going into doing senior thesis. It was new at that time. But subsequently I hear over and over again how this is so helpful for understanding academic writing. Would you like to speak for a moment on that?
Sure.
On the spot?
Sure.
Yeah.
I actually didn't lead it. I had a more experienced mom than myself lead it, but it was very helpful. So I would say that there's a lot of times what you hear from parents in CC is they'll say, okay, we used LTW, the Lost Tools of Writing, and then all of a sudden, CC just left us. And now how are we supposed to help our Challenge 2, 3, and 4 students? And the problem is that they're not understanding that the Office of Assertion is what they're supposed to be using to help their writing. And so it also it's my understanding that this is also how the SEU classes are kind of grading the writing of the students there for the dual credit. And so it's just a really helpful book. We kind of start mentioning it when we move into the comparison essay in Challenge 1. So we kind of start softly like introducing that idea of the Office of Assertion. We start using that grammar. So I think for parents who, I think the earlier you get involved with this resource, the better you're going to feel equipped for helping your student, even as early as Challenge 1. And just really kind of just understanding, okay, how are we kind of helping? What's the framework we're using when we make these assertions, right, in these essays? And then kind of going from that, how are we kind of assessing the child's work or the student's work as they're progressing through Challenge 2, 3, and 4? So it's very small, like it's not an overwhelming.
Yeah, it's not big book.
No. And so, yeah, I think it's super, super helpful for moms as well as the students. But yeah.
And I got it.
Helpful?
I got it right before Reagan was going to be graduating. So I flew through it and just didn't really have the time to absorb it. And now I'm kind of looking forward. Now my kids are going to be getting older, and so I can dip back into it. So
I've been able to use it in class. Sometimes I take 15 to 30 minutes, especially this semester, to talk over senior thesis. And so honing in on certain chapters in their process of writing their senior thesis has been helpful to review it as well too.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, I think it's just it's not well known. I think sometimes it's underutilized. So thank you for giving that little, plug for it. Okay, so I'm going to quickly go through some online resources that we have. A lot of us are not, because CC Connected came out when we had already been doing CC for a while. So some of us don't really go on here, but did just want to show you, if you go to the Learning Center, There is a document, it's just called CC Digital Directory. You can print it out and refer to it. That way you're not jumping on your computer all the time in the middle of the day. This is the kind of thing that you want to do during the summer. You don't want to do it in February, like try to pull out things. So I often put, if I'm going to use things like this, I go ahead and hit a favorites. Like if there's a video I want to use later on in the year, there are some good videos on here that you might want to use throughout the summer to prep your kids or prep yourself for it. So this is like a calculus for everyone, how to use it. Just a couple of videos. And I usually just kind of heart them and look at them later because you can sort by your favorites. Romans Road Media that Melissa mentioned earlier, all those videos are on here. It's actually, I think it's called a learning pathway that you click on use. A couple other things. Oh, this is the student leader preparation template. This is on CC Connected to help them with leading the strands. So there are some of these things. Just make sure over the summer you're looking through things and seeing what's in there that might be helpful. But you don't want to be doing that when you're in the middle of the year. I generally find that if I do that, things just go awry. And then it's good also to go through if you scroll all the way to the bottom of the CC pages, there is our blog. You can click links to that. There's a lot of good things for articles written about senior thesis or going into challenge for preparing for transcripts. And speaking of which, you can go, if you go, I'll have to fix that slide later. But if you're in your parent role there, along the side, there is a transcript service. It's a good thing. Like I waited a little too long on some things. I started super early, like challenge B, but then I kind of got lazy. And then the summer before challenge 4, I was really like, oh my goodness, I got to get this going. So we do have a transcript service. The transcripts made easy. They've updated, but this is what I used and it worked really well. Reagan got into the college that she preferred. I really didn't have any difficulty. It's not rocket science the way some people will make it sound like. It really is basic. And this gives a nice step-by-step way to do it. And
I will say that the CC one, you can, it will like pre-fill all the things for you, and you can go in and edit and add things that you have. Say you have a PE class or something like that you've added in. And so, but customer service, customer care, like if you email them, they're more than happy to walk you through that process and show you and answer any questions you have about the transcripts.
It's a lot more user-friendly than our old system was. This one's it's made directly for CC. So super friendly. Okay, so most of you already know about college credit. We have the dual enrollment program. These are the programs that are available for concurrent enrollment for Challenge 4. I believe they are divided. I should have like a dividing line right across the middle because one is first semester, one's second semester. If you want to see more information about that, that's on page 67 of your catalog about what the spring and fall dividing line there. Most of you know that we have postgraduate programs now. You can actually get your undergrad through CC and SCU together, and then they do have their gap year program, the Odyssey program. I know, Kenna, you know that Krista really plugs the Odyssey program because it was very helpful. Krista's on the other half of Kentucky. I think they've had good success with that Odyssey program. So. All right, does anybody have any more questions before the end? We are getting a little past time. We're about 7 minutes over. This is my code if anybody wants. My code will expire at the end of March, but it gives you free flashcards or a Trivium table with $75 purchase. So any questions? Can I see you're unmuted?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so when Melissa was talking about senior thesis, am I like dreaming that I saw in the guide that it's either the whole class does the senior thesis or they all don't? It's like a group decision, or it's the director's decision next year.
I talked to all my parents about it in the summer before we started and just saw where everybody was, even in family interviews. I think it's perfectly okay for a class to do it and one student to opt out of it as well. I think that would, if the parent, as the teacher, decides they're not going to require it, that's fine. But if the other students want to do it, then I will put it on for sure. So, yeah. I've also seen some students that, some ways that parents have maybe tailored that is where they have them maybe write a shorter paper or the abstract and be able to present an abstract and get questions from that, but not have the longer paper. So there are ways that people have tailored and scaled it for their student, but I don't think that it's required one way, like it doesn't have to be all or nothing. I don't think. I've never seen that.
Yeah, and I think Reagan in her class, they had, she had a big challenge 4 class. I think it was 8 students, which is a good size, I think. And there was one student who didn't do it at all. And then there was another student who did something like did a little lighter one and still did his presentation. But then 6 ended up going through. Oh no, there was one that was planning on just doing it light, but then once he saw everybody else was excited about it, he ended up digging deeper at the end. It didn't end up as much as he wanted, but he still ended up pushing himself when he saw everybody else was getting excited about their subjects. So,
Hey, Melissa, you kind of spoke to this just a little bit, but what would you say to parents who are concerned about the Calculus for Everyone book when their child is not to that level in math or doesn't plan to be by the senior year? Is that still a usable resource for them? Like, what would you say to parents who have hesitations
Absolutely.
about that?
Yeah, I think the prerequisite is only Algebra 2. Is that correct, Krista? I think that's what it says from the Roman Roads. I think it's a lot more hospitable than Saxon physics was.
oh yeah.
And it's very hospitable to walk through the concepts at a pace that is not only just teaching the math concept, but the history behind it, the why, the examples. There's so many drawings in it that are helpful that we practice writing on the board just to help solidify the information in our brains as well. And so I think it's very hospitable. I think that students and parents both will find that it's approachable from many levels. I have a student in my class that is that has some educational challenges, and I think that it's wonderful whenever you have students of different levels of math knowledge. I have one student that's pretty much a math whiz, and so he can get up there and help explain it in a way that is easier for the other students to understand than maybe what they read in the chapter sometimes. Or they'll read the chapter and take notes, but then hearing somebody else's perspective in the class discussion and the conversation adds more levels of understanding. And so, yeah, as a parent, I think that it is very approachable and very easy to walk through. That there
I know
are
there's
study
parents that
questions.
have read it just for fun and they don't know the
Yeah.
math, but it does say Algebra 1. But there are parents that have just been like, oh, these concepts,
And it's not a lot of like math computation through the year. There are the first 4 or 5 chapters are just like review questions. And then once you get into some of the math, you start to have exercises at the end of each chapter, but it's not a lot. And it's really just helping them solidify the concept they learned. And so it's very approachable and very helpful for all levels of education, I think. Yeah.
Sorry, Tucker has a question now.
Yeah, I wanted to ask about, while we're on the topic of Calculus for Everyone, those exercises at the end of the chapter, would those be comparative? Is it comparatively more or less or maybe equal to the on your own questions that accompany the Apologia Science curriculum?
I think probably comparable. Yeah, I think it's hey, you just learned about this. Now let's practice it really quick in the middle of the chapter. And so it's all at the end. But yeah, I think that's a really good comparison, Tucker, of what it looks like in the class. Yeah.
All right. Any more questions? All right. Well, I think I'm going to wrap it up. We are a little bit over. So thank you everyone for attending, and you're welcome to reach out to Melissa. I'm sure she's happy to help. And if anybody has problems with, finding out, remembering what resources, it's pretty easy for Challenge 4. So just a reminder, I am doing that pop-up bookshop. I'm going to do my end credits now. I am doing that pop-up bookshop in person. If anybody wants me to, like, if you're a little further away from Louisville, I could do this in April, schedule a time to do this in your area. We're using it, especially for you leaders, we're using it as a community launch, or launching into summer, like making sure that we're still staying connected over the summer. So there's some people that are going to bring their communities to this and then go out to lunch afterwards and discuss like maybe doing a summer book club or play dates or something like that. But it's a way to like get started back into the summer, into summer without losing our community during that time. And then these are our practicum dates, so you should make sure that you are registered at this point. I'm really actually been going through some of this stuff. I'm really excited about the material this year, getting very excited. I think it's going to be awesome. And then the new product blitz, like I said, I did have the recording on the old slide back there, but it is on my YouTube channel now. And then I'll be sending out the recording of this. And we will be talking about the reasoning together, words in the word in more depth in that meeting. But there will be the new events coming up for that. Again, these are our March Madness events, and I think that's just about everything. So thank you, everybody who participated, and thank you for attending. And thank you, Melissa, for all your help and your contributions. And thank you, Jamie, too, for helping me with Office of Assertion. So
Yeah, we'll be doing this one again in the end of the month too. So if you have friends or community members that you want to point to it, just let them know.
yep, awesome. All right, thank you so much. You all have a great evening. I'll let you get to your dinners and your families. So have a good night.
Night. Thanks.